Is living in Davenport better than living in Bettendorf, Iowa? Well, that's actually what we're gonna talk about today. And this is a question that I get all the time. Especially if you're watching this channel, you're probably curious which one you want to live in. So let's dive into Bettendorf and Davenport. So what is Bettendorf and Davenport? Well, really, when you're talking about the Quad Cities, we are talking about the two largest cities on the Quad Cities Iowa side, because the Quad Cities is actually Iowa and Illinois, but for the two big major cities, Bettendorf and Davenport are on the Iowa side. But before we get into the compare and contrast, what do you guys think of the beard? I've decided that I'm gonna grow it out a little bit, but I'm curious, what do you guys think? Should I go less beard, more beard, no beard? I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing, but I know if I went no beard, my wife would be absolutely pissed because she thinks I look like a baby when I do shave it. But let me know down in the comments. I am curious what you guys think. But when we get into Davenport and Bettendorf, what are the major differences? Well, the first major difference is the population size. Yes, I said both of these cities are the largest on the Iowa side of the Quad Cities, but when you're comparing Bettendorf to Davenport, there really is no comparison. First off, Davenport is sitting at about 100,000 people and Bettendorf is only around 40,000. That's a pretty big gap when you're talking about population. And it does factor into what people like and don't like about both cities. When we're talking about cost of living, that is one factor to consider, because cost of living does vary from city to city, even though they're right next door. In fact, they're neighbors, they have the same city boundaries, and you wouldn't think it'd change a whole lot from side to side, but it does. And in the grand scheme of things, generally speaking, Bettendorf is going to be on the higher end of things. The major thing that is different when it comes to cost of living, comparing Davenport to Bettendorf, is the housing prices. Bettendorf is the one that is higher because it has the highest home values on the average, not everywhere, but on the average compared to any city in the Quad Cities. What does that look like? Well, you're sitting at around the $250,000 to $350,000 mark for an average home in Bettendorf, and then in Davenport, you're sitting at about a $200,000 home for the average. Now, can you get something below the average? Absolutely. Can you get something above the average? Absolutely. But in general, Bettendorf is going to be on that higher end because all the new developments, all the new buildings being put up, all the new houses being put up, so things are just a little bit more expensive here. And also along those same lines, there are some stores around here that are going to be a little bit more pricey. Now, I don't know this for sure, but I have been told that one of our local grocery stores, Hy-Vee, changes their prices based on the neighborhood. Now, I have no proof of this. I have no facts on that, but I've been told that they do change that. And if that's the case, Bettendorf is a little bit more expensive. And when you go to a Hy-Vee, it does feel a little bit more expensive in general compared to like a big box store. But when you compare Hy-Vee to Hy-Vee, I don't know, there may be something to it, but again, I don't know for sure, so I cannot speak on it 100%. That's what I've been told. Now, when we're talking lifestyle, when it's coming to Bettendorf versus Davenport, it's a lot different. Because Davenport is so much bigger in population, you definitely have more of that city-esque feel to it than you do in Bettendorf. Bettendorf is really well known for its residential areas and not so much for pretty much anything else. You know, it is growing. I've talked about that before. We are getting a lot more restaurants, event venues, parks, all sorts of different things, but Davenport definitely has a lot more of that just because of population size alone. And when we're talking downtown areas, Davenport does not even compare to Bettendorf. Davenport's downtown area is far superior. It's got a ton of stuff going on down there. It's where all the main events of the Quad Cities really takes place. For example, we have the Big 7 race in the middle of the summer, which brings in a ton of people to the Quad Cities. And they also have all the major parades. They have the Red, White, and Boom in July. They have the River Bandits, they have the Farmers Market, they have all sorts of different things. Whereas Bettendorf's downtown, you don't got much. You have the casino down there, you got some restaurants. They are developing and they are really trying to make it into a formal downtown, but overall, it's just a whole different atmosphere when you're going from Bettendorf versus Davenport, especially when it comes to how it feels and the vibe that you get from each city, because it is a whole different vibe. Bettendorf for the longest time was just a small town, but it is starting to come into its own as a city. It's still not anywhere close to what Davenport is like. And now let's talk about education in the Quad Cities. Well, actually, we'll talk about Davenport and Bettendorf specifically. When you go onto niche.com, you're gonna look up rankings, and when you look at niche.com, Bettendorf has the top 2 schools in the Quad Cities, let alone the Iowa side. And when you look at Davenport, they're in the top 20. So when you're looking at educations and specifically the rankings, well, in this case, Bettendorf has the better rankings for the Quad Cities and specifically between Davenport and Bettendorf. But what are those schools? Well, in Davenport, you have the Davenport School District. In Bettendorf, you actually have 2 different school districts. You have, of course, the Bettendorf School District, but you also have the Pleasant Valley School District. But here's the thing, it gets even more complicated than that, because Davenport schools and Bettendorf schools aren't based on just where the city line is, because sometimes in Bettendorf, the Bettendorf schools, you're getting Davenport addresses and vice versa. So, and definitely when you're looking at Pleasant Valley, you get a lot of Bettendorf addresses that are in Pleasant Valley School District. So you got to keep that in mind. If you're moving here and you want a specific school district, you cannot go off of the city line or the addresses, because it's not always the case. And if you are moving here and you want to know where you're going to be moving when it comes to school districts, you're going to want to reach out. My number is popping up down below. I am the one that helps people buy and sell homes around here, and I know exactly where the school district lines are when it comes to specific homes. So if that's important to you, make sure you give me a call. And if you have any questions, just let me know, because I'd love to talk about this stuff all day long, and I would love to help you and your family make that move to the Quad Cities. Now, I've alluded to this in previous points, but when it comes to Bettendorf versus Davenport, the entertainment options are really in stark contrast. Davenport is the king in this aspect. They have a ton of stuff that goes on, specifically in the downtown area, but really all over the city in general. They have all of the big events that happen in the Quad Cities, besides over in Moline with the Vibrant Arena, but that's besides the point, because we're talking about Davenport and Bettendorf. But they have all of the big names, all of the big things going on. But that doesn't mean that Bettendorf doesn't have anything going on. They have parades. They just had the Halloween parade. They had the 4th of July parade, which I got to take part in. When I did that, it's kind of funny actually. We were handing out candy, and I happened to get just a plastic Walmart bag, and that Walmart bag decided to break on me while I was carrying the candy. So I was trying to hold the bag in one hand and throw it into the candy into the street for the kids. It was quite comical if you're watching it, but it wasn't that much comfortable for me. But they do have that parade as well. But on the other side of things is they're developing a lot of new things. They have the Betplex, which I've talked about. It's a big sports complex where they have soccer fields, baseball fields, they have bowling alleys, they have all sorts of different things in there. And not too far away, they just built the Iron Tee, which I made videos about in the past, and it's like a Top Golf, and it's gonna be a big draw. It really is a big draw already, because it's bringing a lot of folks to the Quad Cities. So you do have a big difference in entertainment options when looking at Davenport versus Bettendorf, but both cities do have a little bit of that going on. Now, a concern that I hear fairly often when moving here is, what is the public transportation look like? Well, in Davenport and Bettendorf, you have a stark contrast in what that public transportation looks like. Again, Davenport just has a lot more of it, and they have a lot more routes, specifically the bus routes. They can get you pretty much anywhere you want to go within the city. You're gonna do some walking, just because the bus stops that are around are not obviously next to everybody's house, but they are available. When it comes to Bettendorf, it's available. it's just not super widely used, and it's not just very super widely utilized, I guess, because there are just not that many stops. There are buses that go around, and they do have some stops all over, but when you're comparing apples to apples, Davenport definitely has a lot more of that. But if you don't want to ride the bus, what are your other options? Well, it's a little bit lacking on what that looks like, but one major one is Uber and Lyft. We do have both of those, but be cautious with that, because over the last couple of years, to be quite honest, it's been a little bit lacking. I know when they first came here, when I was here in 2015, you could get an Uber or a Lyft at any point in time, but ever since 2020 happened, a lot of Uber drivers and a lot of Lyft drivers have fallen off. So it is a little bit lacking. It's harder to find one of those. And if you need somewhere to go, you're probably gonna wanna pre-order, schedule it before you go out, because the chances of finding one are a little bit slimmer, especially if you're trying to use it during the day. If you're at night and you're at the bars with your friends, there's a better chance of it being available. But again, you wanna take precautions with that, because you just don't know what it's gonna look like. Now, I personally love to get outdoors and into the parks. And when you're talking Davenport versus Bettendorf, honestly, they're both pretty comparable. In Davenport, there's obviously a lot more just because of the nature of the size of Davenport. I know I keep bringing that up, but it's just the case. You have 100,000 people versus 40,000 people. It's gonna be a little bit different in that aspect. But what kind of parks are we looking at? Some of my favorites in Davenport are Bettendorf Park, which is literally right in the center of Davenport. And I really like that park because it's so beautiful. You have the alley of trees, you have the conservatory there, and at any point in time during the year, even going into winter, is a beautiful park. And I've been told, and I don't know this for sure, but I've been told it was modeled after Central Park in New York City. One of my commenters actually let me know that. So if you ever have a cool fact that I haven't talked about, let me know in the comments, because you never know, it might make it into one of my videos. But in Bettendorf, there are 26 parks, and I have been to every single one of them for one specific reason. In Bettendorf, they have many different volunteering committees, and I'm sure Davenport does too. I'm just not as familiar, but in Bettendorf, I know for sure they do. And one of those is called the Park Ambassadors. What do the park ambassadors do? Well, we go around to each of the parks during the summer, and we drive around literally from park to park to park and just make sure everything is going well. We are looking out for, graffiti. We're looking out, make sure things are clean, make sure things are functioning. We wear these bright yellow shirts so people can come and talk to us. And it's great to interact with the community, because the community a lot of times has some great ideas on where the parks can go. So it's really cool to see that. But that's why I know there's 26 parks in Bettendorf. In fact, I'm in Crow Creek Park right now. You can see this pergola behind me. If you know where this is in Crow Creek Park, let me know, because if you're local, you probably know exactly where this pergola is. But this is a great park, and I really like it. But Bettendorf, yeah, they have a lot of great stuff, but so does Davenport. So really kind of a draw when you're looking at Davenport versus Bettendorf in the park system. Now, whether you want to move to Davenport or Bettendorf, you're gonna wanna have somebody that knows the insides and outs of each of the cities, and that is me. I am a licensed realtor here, and I have a team that helps me out. So if you're wanting to move here, hit me up, give me a call, send me a text. I'd love to answer any questions that you might have. So is Davenport better than living in Bettendorf? Well, that's really up to you to really decide, but I hope this video helps you figure out what you like and don't like about each city. But if you're curious about what the cities actually look like, I do make vlogs, and I will post them right here. We have a whole playlist of what those vlogs are, and you can possibly see what the differences are.